Drunk on Kombucha, Chapter 3, Don't Be Afraid. So are you trembling, afraid of my dad? What if I told you he was also a Marine? Okay, now what if I told you that when he went into the Marines, he was 6'3" and weighed 135? A little less imposing, right? As a matter of fact, that was probably 10 pounds heavier than when he played football in high school. More correctly, he rode the bench for 4 years and was there, I believe, merely so the school had enough bodies to field a team and practice against another 11 bodies. When he went to college, he decided to do the same thing. After a year of bench splinters, the coach took him aside. I think you could probably make better use of your time, the coach advised. Thus ended my dad's football career. But a few years later, he was on Iwo Jima. We never heard a lot of the gritty stories from the war. I believe the men made an agreement on the way home to stay mute. My dad once explained to me, before he took me to see the movie Patton, now we don't talk like that anymore. We may have used those cuss words in the war, but we left that language over there. Once, after asking my dad, what would you say if I got an F on my report card? You would say, S-H-I-T, I spelled. I'm quite certain I had just learned that word that very day and was just testing it. I flunked. My dad pulled the car over and lit into an explanation about how we did not use language like that, yada, yada, yada. But I believe I avoided a spanking in lieu of the lecture. So the S word and the F word were taboo, but you could goddamn all you wanted. Anyway, apparently the S and the F words were left over there, along with the true stories. However, here are the stories we did hear, which likely had some basis in truth, perhaps. When the big tough Marines landed in one of the non-English speaking countries, they picked up the sing-song melody that they heard the children chanting on their way to school. Instead, the Marines, in their big old boots, marched to the rhythm. Turns out the kids were reciting a nursery rhyme. Another time, when the Marines ended up in a town before the Army got there, they taught the kids how to greet the Army boys. Hello, dog-faced bastards, the children waved at the Army as they marched into town. So I guess it's okay to teach small children to say bastards, but I can't spell S-H-I-T? Finally, my dad told us about one night when he was on guard duty. There was a standoff between the two sides. Each would send up an occasional volley just to remind the other side they were there, so neither side moved forward. The guard's duty was to make sure that the volleys always came from the same distance. My dad was sitting up in a tree trying to figure out how to stay awake through the night. His solution? He pulled a pin out of a grenade and held the handle down. Fortunately, he did not doze, loosen his grip, and blow himself up. That's the story he told us anyway. So maybe you should be afraid. My dad did have two personalities, depending on which glasses he was wearing. One pair of horn-rimmed glasses were slightly rounded. He was jolly, happy, and funny when he wore those. The other pair were similar, but with a more square, hard-angled, thicker line that was going through the lens. Wearing them made him grouchy. I later realized when he was wearing those, the bifocals, it meant he was working and I was probably interrupting him, thus the less than fun demeanor. He had an impish sense of humor. He was what we call a gentleman farmer who raised cattle. When his city-born godson came to visit, my dad placed milk cartons under the Charolais cattle, who were white, and chocolate milk cartons under the Angus, the black cattle. They were both beef cattle, not dairy cows, but what would that city boy know? One of my most profound memories took years for me to understand and implement. My dad and I were the only ones at home, and he drove me to a family friend's home one evening. He put something on their back screened-in porch. I can't tell you what, and you'll see why. He then told me I could not tell anyone what he had done. See, the dad in the family had an opportunity, but the dad would likely turn it down because he did not have something he would need. That something is what my dad put on the back porch. The family friend father later did accept the opportunity. What I learned that night was anonymous generosity.